No, Paul, do you have the?
Yes, yes. Hi, everyone. I just started recording the presentation for those that won't be able to join today.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
So recording has started.
Great, thank you. Chip just wanted to make sure that if I have any bloopers, that he has something to show at the next holiday party. So I think that was the main goal. Welcome, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. And Chip, I believe you have the presentation up. Let's see if it comes up here.
I believe I'm now presenting. Is it up?
Yeah, it's showing now. I just my system probably a little slow. I will begin the presentation, and I'm going to, as Lance mentioned, I'm going to talk a little bit about Local Foods, Local Places program. Before I get into that in a little bit more detail, I'm going to provide a short overview of EPA's Office of Community Revitalization, in which LFOP is housed, the Local Foods, Local Places program, as well as the Building Blocks program that Chip is going to talk about. So just to give a little bit of context, since 1996, our office has been working with communities, originally doing a lot of what EPA traditionally called smart growth work, focused on looking at how communities plan and think about the space in which communities live and how that can affect or work in concert with EPA's mission to protect human health and the environment, as well as think about the benefits of creating and enhancing places that people live in and love. We have traditionally provided technical assistance and planning assistance to communities very broadly in a large array of topics. We develop tools and publications that help communities to achieve the growth that they desire, and you'll see a lot of those publications in our EPA Smart Growth website. And we work very closely with federal, state, and local governments, as well as with nonprofits, and work hard to bring those groups together into the conversation, because when one is missing, sometimes we miss opportunities. Next slide. There it is. So you can see from the map, and I don't even know, Chip, if I missed something, by the way, please step in and fill in the blanks. But I don't know the total number of across all the different programs, but you can see that we've worked with many different communities across the U.S., as well as one dot in Puerto Rico, you'll see. So many different programs that have focused on local foods, which is the program I work on specifically, but also focused on issues of equitable development. We had a program called Cool and Connected that focused on broadband connectivity. We've focused on flood resilience and other disaster resilience, as well as green infrastructure and infill development. So a lot of issues related to especially in downtown or urban core revitalization. Next slide. I thought there was one more. I will just mention that in the context of all those different programs, if you go to our website, which is epa.gov/smartgrowth, you'll be able to see a lot of different examples there of the different programs and types of technical assistance that we have provided over many years, as well as a lot of case studies that can provide you a lot of ideas within the context of your own community. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about Local Foods, Local Places program, which currently has an open application period. And we are accepting applications through November 13th. This program, we partner closely with USDA, U.S. Department of Agriculture's Agriculture Marketing Service. And we kind of focus on the local places side. They focus a lot on the local food side, food system development. But our overall kind of three main pillars of this program are to provide economic opportunity for farmers, local growers, and kind of the overall, sorry, my screen keeps popping up with the lobby, so it just have to clear that. So it provides economic opportunity for local farmers and businesses, as well as like value-added food processors, really anybody associated with what would be the local food system. And as a main pillar is also to provide or increase access to healthy foods, especially amongst those who are disadvantaged within a community. And they may also live in a food desert, for example. And so trying to provide those channels for supplying healthier foods with the obvious goal of increasing healthy diets for healthy outcomes. And then the other, in the placemaking side, is revitalizing downtowns, main streets, and key and often historic neighborhoods that maybe have been overlooked or have lost their vitality over time. And two principles that we operate on the program are that this is a community-driven program. So community sets goals, and that this is also one in which the local steering committee that forms around this, when communities are selected for this program, that they reach out into the neighborhood, and the community engagement is very strong, and that we see participation from those who would be affected and who would benefit from the work of this program. Next slide. So at this year, we have 16 communities participating in the program that are receiving technical assistance. They're the yellow dots on this map that you see. And with the previous communities that have been involved with this program, we've served over 124 communities now. And I would add that you see several that are in kind of the eastern part of the U.S., the Appalachian region and the Mississippi Delta area. The reason for that is the program initiated with work with the Appalachian Regional Commission and the Delta Regional Authority. So that originally was the only location for these programs, and then we've since broadened the program to be nationwide and include U.S. territories. As you see in Puerto Rico, there's one dot there, and that was Kiwamo, Puerto Rico, that we served. Next slide. Thank you. The desired program outcomes for LFOP include community access to state partners and federal partners, and tapping into either their expertise or their knowledge about resources or funding, other things that could help the community. Probably the mainstay of the program is a facilitated workshop in which we bring in professional facilitators with expert knowledge on food systems and placemaking. And we really focus on the intersection of those two things. So the conversation is not just about food system development, but about how that can support local placemaking, or vice versa, how local placemaking and planning doesn't overlook opportunities of developing the local food system. And the two together can really spur momentum, both in terms of revitalization and developing a resilient local food system. We, as a deliverable to the community, we developed an action plan, which is, you see the copy of the cover of the Kiwamo action plan here from 2018. And that action plan is kind of a living document, is how we describe it. The community uses it to attempt to accelerate and move forward on goals that they have identified. We help shape the process primarily by asking questions, probing questions, and helping to think through some of the issues. But these are the community's goals, and we encourage that. And we also encourage heavy community engagement in this planning process, and so much that often the plans, the original goals, that are defined by a local steering committee may change or shift based on that engagement, which is a healthy part of the process for planning, to make sure that these goals are well grounded with the community members. And then we also push to develop new and stronger partnerships, especially when you look at placemaking and planning, city planning, and then food systems development, having local growers in the same room with city planners or transportation people, so that they're starting to think more holistically about all of these things, because they may traditionally not be in the same room planning together. Next slide. And this is the approach that we take. This is a model for most of the technical assistance programs we do. Some are slightly different, but basically prior to the workshop that I mentioned, there's a planning phase in which, if selected, a community forms a steering committee, and that could be a variety of different people, city officials, local NGO groups, neighborhood association representatives. Sometimes it's a concerned community citizen or champion who's really promoting this. And they host a series of calls, 3 calls, prior to the workshop to plan for the workshop, help develop a draft set of goals to present at the workshop. And then they convene for the workshop. Traditionally, this is done in person. This last year, we've been doing all virtual workshops. So it's been a learning process for us, but it's worked pretty well. And we're still able to even take a community tour. We do that virtually with the community members. The idea of the tour is to both help federal and state partners who may not be familiar with the community to learn more about assets on the ground and the context of what they're trying to do, as well as give some members of the community along the tour stop a chance to kind of tell their story and explain planning and how it affects them. Then in that workshop, we brainstorm with the community members present actions to support the goals that the steering committee had formed, and to think about creative ways to achieve them and try to make those achievable shorter term actions, so that momentum continues. And then after the workshop, we develop a report working with the steering committee over a series of calls. And usually within about a month or 2 after the workshop, we'll have that report available to the community. And those reports are posted. If you go to the, again, the EPA site for local foods, local places, I think I have the URL up in a couple slides from now. You can find all those action plans from all the prior LFLP communities. And it lists the goals and the community story and gives you some idea of what some communities have been doing. Next slide. Just in terms of the selection process, since we're in the open application period, it is a national competition, and any local governments, regional nonprofit groups, could be a neighborhood association, and tribal governments can apply. They're all eligible to do that. When we close the window, we'll begin a review process, and we review on several criteria. They include the community's need, what's their economic situation, what are, there's different factors for describing need, but essentially trying to understand how badly the community needs this help, what their capacity is to take the action plan and do something with it. And hopefully seeing a little bit of organizational experience to be able to take the next steps on the action plan. The goals that they set, that they're in line with the program, and the fit of the program similarly. We're not necessarily looking for a community that wants to bring a grocery store in and is looking for a marketing plan to do that. What we're really interested in is a community-driven process to develop the local food system. So if they're looking for a retail outlet to provide fresh produce, ideally that might be through a community-driven food co-op or some other method for getting food to the community that involves community participation. And then partnerships is a person applying the point of contact, working closely with other partners. especially the city and neighborhood groups or a downtown revitalization group, economic development corporation, or something like that. And we also pay special attention to whether or not the location is in or next to an opportunity zone. Next slide. I left this slide in to mention resiliency because it was a focal point of the Kiwamo workshop, because that happened. Actually, we had to delay that workshop because the original date for that workshop the same week that Hurricane Maria hit. We thought they would want to delay by a year or so, but they actually pushed forward with doing a workshop as early as February after the hurricane, and still very much in the middle of trying to recover from that. But one of the reasons they were interested in that was the issue of resiliency, and it ended up being an additional goal that they added to their action plan. And they did that because food access became a critical issue right after the hurricane, but they also wanted to rethink about how the local growers were going to kind of rebuild after the hurricane to be more resilient, diversifying crops, for example, and thinking more carefully about that as part of a resiliency plan, and coordinating with FEMA and others for lessons learned after Maria was also part of their goal making. Resiliency is something that I think is important and can be woven into just about any application. We've seen that in these examples. Mission, South Dakota, we worked with the Lakota Sioux Rosebud Reservation, and they were focused on food sovereignty, more from a kind of cultural perspective. What were culturally appropriate foods for the tribe? Farmington, New Mexico was worried about water access concerns, especially as they were trying to develop local growers and local community gardens in the midst of an extreme drought. Aliquippa, Pennsylvania is a good one to focus on in terms of kind of economic resiliency, as they had lost a lot of their industrial base and thinking about how to reinvent themselves economically. And other communities have, in the current pandemic, have focused a lot on issues of food access and how they go about operating their food system in light of the pandemic. So all of these are great examples of resiliency, and any of them could really apply to a lot of different communities. Next slide. Community has certain responsibilities in the program if they are selected. The first, going back to the planning, convening, and action phase, is that they form a steering committee and that they participate, all members of the steering committee participate in the planning calls, that they participate in the 2-day workshop that we do, including an evening session. In fact, I have an evening session tonight that we're doing for a workshop. So that's a really important part of the workshop, because a lot of people who work during the day are not able to participate. And so this gives an opportunity for a lot of people in the community to participate. Often family members come to the meeting. Sometimes we've seen communities provide childcare on site for the workshops. A little bit different in a virtual setting, but you know, the goal is to get people engaged and get them to provide ideas, their thinking, because they're all knowledgeable about the context of their neighborhoods and their communities, and it's that information that's really most useful to making a plan work for the community. I would mention, in the case of Kiwamo, we did a public event in the evening that felt more like a fiesta, because we had live music there. We had stations. It was in the site of what was actually an abandoned retail site, where the building had solid walls but no roof, and they wanted to do something with that to turn it into a downtown kind of central market, farmers market. So we utilized that space, even though it didn't even have electricity. They brought in a generator, had some lights there, the music, and then people would go station to station to provide their input. And then they got a little passport, and they'd fill out their passport at each station. And at the end of the evening, they could take that passport to a taco truck parked outside to get some free food So it was a great event. We had probably 150 people there, well attended, and might be a couple people on this call who actually participated in that event. It is the responsibility of the community to select a venue if it's in person. If it's virtual, we would provide the platform for doing that usually, and then to plan a community tour. So if we do in person this next year, you would still want to do a tour where we can go to some of the key sites in the community and talk with various community members. And then it's really important for the success of the workshop to engage the community and get community members to participate. And that's also the responsibility of the steering committee. Good outreach creates a good outcome for the workshop. Next slide. The steering committee has a little bit heavier lift than just the participant, in that they're helping to prepare and plan for the workshop, and that they participate fully in that, as well as complete a community assessment between planning calls and work with each other offline, frequently filling in the gaps on the planning for the workshop, as well as comment and review the draft workshop report that we produce. So that they have to make a time commitment to this. Again, it's doable, and a lot of communities have done it, but it's really key. We generally look for a steering committee that's 4 to 6 people. I'd say closer to 6 usually. We've had some that are larger, but when you get too large a committee, it starts to be a little bit more challenging to manage. And so it's really up to the point of contact to go with the number that feels right, but to make sure that the steering committee is representative of both the location as well as the demographic profile of the community. Next slide. The point of contact probably has the heaviest lift. One of the key considerations for point of contact is that they represent the organization that's applying to for assistance. And then once that point of contact is listed in the application, that the point of contact remain on the steering committee and really serves as the chair of the steering committee. We don't want to see switching out the point of contact in the middle of all this, because it really is disruptive to the planning process. So we really look for a strong commitment from the point of contact from the lead organization. And then they're responsible for pulling together the partners. Ideally, they will be able to mention who the partners they plan to work with are in the application, so that there's some upfront thinking about who are the right partners to bring. And if you do need to request a transfer of the point of contact name, we would ask you to seek EPA's approval on that first, especially prior to commencing with the planning calls. Next slide. I just threw this in as an example of the outreach from the folks in Kiwamo, who did an amazing job, I have to say, especially in light of the hurricane. It was really an inspiring group of people to work with. This is a picture of the abandoned facility that they took they opened up all those green windows for the event. And it really excited area businesses and neighboring businesses to this site downtown, because they could see visibly the potential for it. So it was really a clever way to both show the promise of this site and get people interested and activated in it. And they had done quite a bit of work on this, so it was very impressive. They also did a pre-meeting to the workshop to explore some of the questions up front, so they came to the workshop even better prepared. And I think that's my last slide. Let's see, I might have one more, I think. Yes, there's the open application period. This is just the link to the information on the application period. You can also hit the QR code there, will take you to the same link. The deadline again is for, I have not updated this. We extended the deadline. It was originally October 30th. The deadline is now November 13th. So there's still a little bit of time to get that in. Again, a key in the application is to try to list and line up the partners. That tends to take the most time. And we look forward to seeing your application. I think maybe after the presentation, we might have a chance for some questions. So I'll hold off on any questions that people might have right now. And I think Chip's going to present next on his program.
Yeah, thank you so much, John.
Sure.
And, as mentioned, if you have any questions, as someone already did, put them in the chat, and we'll talk about them after the Chip's section. So now it's Chip Gergen to talk about the Building Blocks for Sustainable Communities program. Chip.
Great. Thanks, Lance. Thanks, John. Hi, everybody. Chip Gergen, Office of Community Revitalization at EPA up here in DC. Thanks, everybody, for joining the webinar here. A lot of the nuts and bolts stuff that John talked about apply to building blocks. The main difference being that our program focuses largely on urban, physical development and growth, mostly sort of city planning topics, and not necessarily on that local foods piece. But a lot of it is the same. Sort of, it's a quick, relatively short-term engagement aimed at empowering the local communities and building their capacity, educating the community a little bit on some best practices and strategies that they can use, and really working with the community on sort of the intersection of how the built environment interacts with the physical environment, the natural environment, such as working on things to do with stormwater runoff and green infrastructure and walkability and bikeability rather than automobile travel, but also the other way around, so the way that natural environment impacts our physical environment, so things like flood resilience and other resilience topics. And so we work with the community, much like LFLP, to facilitate a meeting in the community and work together to develop an action plan on the issues that the community identifies. Again, like LFLP, we go through this assess, convene, next steps phase. The community walks out of this process with an actionable short to mid-term action plan that's really community-led and benefits from both expert input as well as community feedback. It is like LFLP, it is a very inclusive program, though we don't necessarily have formal partners like USDA. We often do have those folks come in. We work a lot with HUD. We work a lot with Department of Transportation, with Small Business Administration, with EDA, and other similar local and regional organizations and nonprofits to get everybody in a room to address the issues that the community has identified that they want to work on. We are offering 3 sort of topic areas this year, but are also opening that up during the application process to sort of an open-ended application on the issues that you're dealing with, understanding that there's a lot of challenges that communities are facing right now that may not fit in these buckets, especially as we're dealing with things like the epidemic and related economic downturns. But one of the topic areas that we're addressing this year is addressing emerging mobility. So a lot of communities either have existing transportation problems or challenges or opportunities, but are also facing sort of these emerging trends, be it continued improvement of bike share programs, scooters that are coming around, upcoming the proliferation of electric vehicles and Uber and potentially autonomous vehicles and things like that, and how that affects curbside congestion and parking and roads and public transportation as well. And so we'll be working with communities this year through the process that we've talked about, sort of work through the issues that the locality is dealing with, come up with some strategies for addressing those things, including equity and access to transit. Second topic we're working on is leveraging cultural anchor institutions. So over the years, we've done a lot of projects that have focused on a library or a museum or a nature center that's trying to utilize their physical space, but also their programming to affect other outcomes beyond their traditional mission. So we're hoping to work with communities that see those places as both economic development drivers, placemaking opportunities, but also opportunities to deal with other challenging issues that the community is facing. So we've worked with organizations that are focused on food insecurity, as John was talking about, walkability, placemaking. We worked with a nature center that is trying to do outreach to the community on water issues and pollution of the river nearby up in the Milwaukee River up in Wisconsin. So we'll be working with communities that are trying to leverage those institutions and those places to address other community challenges. And then another new program that we're working through our pilot round on this year is building regional disaster resilience. Most of the OCR programs work with a municipality or even at the neighborhood level. This is a program that works actually at sort of the regional level, helping several communities and counties work together to align themselves and align the various plans that they have for disaster resilience. This is a partnership program we're doing with FEMA to work with. We're right now working in 4 regions on various things, so wildfires, flooding, and issues like that, to really work through both from a relationship and bridge building perspective, from the personnel perspective, but also to look at all the various plans that communities have, their disaster resilience plans, their flood plans, their growth and development plans, comprehensive plans, and really try to bring all these into alignment and develop some ideal next steps to try to move them forward as far as being prepared for any disasters that they see coming out on the horizon. For us, our deadline, the eligibility for applying is much the same as LFLP. Generally, it's a local government, but it can be county, state, territorial. Applying for a local government, again, with the regional resilience program, that's going to be a broader application. The main thing we look for in the other programs is that if it is a nonprofit or some other organization that's applying for a local government, that you also include a letter of support from an elected member of the government, the local government or city staff, to make sure that local government is on board. The deadline for us is November 20th, 2-page letter of interest. We're hoping it will probably follow up by December 20th this year. So again, epa.gov/smartgrowth, there's my email address there. And so we look forward to answering your questions, looking forward to your letters of application.
Yeah, thank you, Chip. So now we'll open it up. If you have any questions, whether in English or in Spanish, you can ask them in the chat. And once we get through those, if you don't feel comfortable writing it, then you can raise your hand with the raise hand function, and we will call on you.
Yes, hi. This is Paul, and just want to go through one question that it is in the chat, and this question was during John's presentation. The question is, what if it's a historic building? Do SHPO needs to certify something?
Good question. We've had several locations use historic buildings potentially for a food-related site, and that has not come up necessarily in the LFOP workshop discussion about what specific certifications or reviews they need for it, except that they have to comply with the requirements associated with that kind of building. In the case of Kiwamo, that building, I don't know if it had a historic designation or not. I don't believe it did. It did have the potential for a brownfields assessment in it, and sometimes we've seen communities use a brownfields assessment and determine whether or not there's might be brownfields contamination on that site, such as asbestos in a building, something like that. And in some cases, the use of brownfields has helped to jumpstart redevelopment of that site, because developers may not want to put their hands on that site until contamination issues have been addressed. In terms of historic designations or design ideas, I haven't seen where it limited their ability to use the site, except in that they have to comply, especially for exterior. If it's a historic building, that might be a different situation in some cases where they, if they have to do a significant rework of the interior, there might be limitations on that. But it's not a restriction from our perspective. So.
Great, thanks, John.
You're welcome. I would say in terms of sites, thinking about that, what we often see are, especially in downtowns, and Kiwamo was an example of this, but across the board we see where, especially in some small rural communities where there's a lot of abandoned buildings or vacant downtown storefronts, and that adds to kind of the economic downturn of a community in a way. And so a lot of communities spend a lot of time trying to reactivate a vacant building or a vacant site. Sometimes it's an empty lot within the community or in a downtown area, and it's kind of a blight to the community. So they're looking for a way to re-energize that part of downtown or a neighborhood by utilizing the building for a food hub, or like I say, a food co-op or some other food related asset. It might be utilizing the downtown space by putting food trucks in there once or twice a week, or a mobile food market, or adding a community garden to a vacant space. And we've had communities focused on that, which also utilize brownfields, because brownfields has a program focused on testing the soils of vacant lots to make sure if they're going to grow food for consumption, that there's no uptake of any potential contaminants in the soil. So those are the kinds of ways in which, again, EPA can assist. On the USDA side, Agriculture Marketing Service can help think through the use of that facility site. So in most of our workshops, the USDA has architects on their staff who provide no-cost service for design ideas associated with a food system facility. So it could be a co-packing facility, or like I say, a food hub. And so they have expertise in what's needed for that kind of facility, and can overlay that to the site that's the community is interested in, and think through whether that's an appropriate site for that, or how best to design it. And they actually did design work on site for Kiwamo, because one of the things Kiwamo wanted to do was use the farmers market site, but solely for that purpose. And they started to realize that they could use the downtime on that site when there's not a farmers market to help generate revenue, to help it make the farmers market more self-sustaining. So they thought about redesigning or designing that site for multi-use purposes. So it could also be kind of a hall, a community hall for events, or they could do theater presentations or live wedding receptions, those kind of things. So the architects were able to kind of provide real-time renderings of ways in which that facility could be designed.
Yeah. Thank you, John. So there's another question in the chat, and I think this is for both, for Chip and you, and the question is there a maximum cost to offer assistance, when it comes to these two technical assistance opportunities?
Go ahead, Chip. You start.
So I would just, one of the confusing things that typically comes up in this is the difference between this. I'm not sure if you mean like cost to us or cost to you, but that this is it not a grant? It is a technical assistance program. A lot of people are think it may be a grant, so there's no money attached to this. Although through the work and through especially bringing our partners with us to these workshops, sometimes they have funding or programs that can be used to help further the action plan that gets developed. So for us, we pay for the the contractors and the travel and things to get to you. There is no cost to the community for this, other than if there is some sort of cost for the venue. Typically, communities are able to find a free venue at a public building. But the main things that the community is expected to provide is, again, sort of the transportation for the community tour that we go on, and then the location for the workshop are the only real costs that come into it, as far as the project is concerned.
Thank you, Shivan. I'm going to translate now in Spanish your response. La pregunta es si existe algún máximo en costo para ofrecer la asistencia. La respuesta es que no. Algo que trae estos programas es que este programa de asistencia técnica no es una subvención, por lo tanto no hay dinero, ¿no? Relacionado a la asistencia a la comunidad. Así que la asistencia técnica no le va a costar nada, ¿verdad? A la comunidad. Cualquier costo involucrado en términos de transportación del personal de EPA para asistir a la comunidad, eso lo cubre la agencia. Pero en términos de dineros, ¿no? Como no es una subvención, es un programa de asistencia técnica, pues no involucra algún costo para la comunidad.
I will add to that, Paul. Many communities use this plan, or the final workshop plan, as a business plan to seek additional resources and actually apply to grants. And many have told us that this has helped them to acquire those additional grants. We have a lot of more, it's case by case basis. We haven't tracked that specifically, but we do get examples of that.
Thank you, John.
One other thing I'll mention, we have translation services available. Podemos hacer talleres en español, and we use that in Kiwamo, though in most cases in Kiwamo, everybody was dual language. So, but that is something we can provide.
Gracias, John.
Yeah, are there any other questions for John or Chip? If we don't have any more questions, John or Chip, do you have anything else that just popped into your mind that you think would be great to add?
I think I've covered most anything that I can think of, but if if people have questions, probably reach out to you, Lance or Paul, and we'll be glad to assist in answering those questions. And again, for LFOP, the deadline is November 13th, and Chip, I think Building Blocks is the 20th, right?
Yeah, November 20th.
So we look forward to your applications.
Yeah, well, thank you, John. Thank you. Oh, here's another question.
Yeah, there is a way to do that. And actually, I think, I don't know if Brenda Reyes is on the line, but from EPA. How do I spell her name?
Yes, I'm here.
Hi, Brenda.
Hi.
¿Cómo está?
Todo muy bien. I participated in 2018 in the Kiwamo training. So Kiwamo had a very clear idea of what they wanted to do. The person that wrote the proposal was Cristina Miranda Palacios. Cristina is very much involved with the League of the Cities, La Liga de Ciudades. And I'm quite sure that if anybody needs her, she'll be more than glad to come and talk about their experience.
I think that would be great. The other thing I'm going to do here, if I can manage technology, is I'm putting in the chat room the URL for that is the URL to the Kiwamo Report online. It's housed on the USDA site, our partner site. So you can look through there. It lists both contact information, but also list all the goals of the community. So give you a good idea of what they did. But you know, I'm certainly happy to help try to put you in touch with them. And Brenda locally probably is also a good person to try to reach out to, or to any of us on our side. Hopefully that will help give you some ideas.
Yeah, I keep in touch with Cristina. She's involved with a lot of redevelopment projects in the Rio Piedras area. And she belongs to the League of the Cities. She's done outstanding work. I think that she will make a great presenter at any time, you know, now or down the road in the future. I think she's great.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you, Brenda.
There's two questions. One is, can projects spill over to several topics areas, or do they have to be specific to one?
So from the LFOP perspective, projects often spill over into multiple areas. In fact, in a way that's encouraged, where especially the intersection of placemaking and local food. So for example, a project maybe where they're thinking about developing a food hub, but at the location of a Rails to Trails project, and they're trying to encourage walkability or downtown walkability improvements or walking audits, how they can make more of a destination so that people who want to walk have a place to walk to, if that's kind of what you're alluding to in terms of multiple topic areas. Probably similar on the building block side, but I'll let Chip answer that.
Right, sure. Yeah, I mean, most communities select, I mean, when we do a project, they identify through the workshop process 3 to 5 goals. And of course, anything with development, everything is sort of overlaps, right? So placemaking and transportation and things like that. So I could definitely see, you know, through the workshop, multiple areas sort of being addressed that would overlap the sort of project areas for sure.
Thank you. And the other question is if will the slides be shared?
We can definitely do that. Absolutely. Or we can get it to you and to
yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Awesome. So we will be sharing the slides, you know, to everyone that attended, and you know, with I'm gonna be using the registration, so I can have your emails and send it to you.
Great. And maybe even post on the Region 2 site the webinar recording.
Absolutely, yes. So back to you, Lance.
Yeah, that's perfect. Yeah, we'll have all those ready in case y'all want to watch the webinar again to answer some questions, or to share it with anyone that you think might be interested in the opportunity, whether the webinar or the slides that we're putting out. So here we are, almost 10 o'clock here in Eastern time. So we're going to wrap this up. Thank you all for coming. Thank you, John. Thank you, Chip. Thank you for everyone who helped organize, Paul, Eliana, Hector. Thank you all for all the work that y'all did. And I hope you all learned a lot about these 2 great opportunities. And as was mentioned, my name is Lance Caldwell. I'm the Region 2 person of contact for this. So if y'all have any further questions down the road, please let me know, and we'll get you in contact with someone who can answer or get you with those resources. Thanks again, everybody, and have a great rest of your day.
Great. Thank you, Lance. Thank you, Paul, Brenda, Eliana.
Yeah. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.